Welcome to the Pulse of Story podcast. I am Dara Christopher. Of course, I'm along here with Mark Travis, and we are so thrilled to have the great Dara Marks joining us. Good to see you, Dara.
Yay!
Well, I'm with the great Mark and the great Derek, so it all works out.
Now, Dara, for those who don't know, is a major Hollywood script consultant. You were named, I think, like the top Hollywood script consultant by Creative Screenwriting Magazine, correct?
I was, yes, thank you.
And you've got a best-selling book out called Inside Story.
Yes, I do.
Big bestseller, and you've got a new online course that you're putting out there, which is phenomenal. We'll get into that later.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we're just getting ready to launch. Very, very, a lot of work and very proud of it. Thank you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, here's my question for you guys. So,
Yes.
is there a crisis of story in Hollywood right now? What I find so interesting is, I don't know if you've seen this, that Chris Nolan, his new film, which doesn't even come out for another year, called Odyssey, is shot entirely on IMAX cameras, and it's going to be in IMAX theaters. And I'm wondering if maybe like music, you used to have the old Victrola, and then you had radio, then you had records and cassettes and 8 tracks and CDs, and now it's all streaming. Do you think that maybe regular movie theaters have become sort of antiquated as a way of getting story out there? And the fact that Nolan is just betting it all on IMAX. And then you have theaters like Cosm. I don't know if you guys have ever been to Cosm, which is sort of like a mini Sphere. And even Sphere in Vegas is showing The Wizard of Oz. So do we need new ways to show and tell stories? Or is there a crisis of storytelling that people just need all these bells and whistles to see what a good story is?
Well, I think it's yes to all of the above. Okay.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple ways to look at this. Number one, I don't know if you know this, but I saw in the news this morning that people are now buying tickets for Nolan's film, The Odyssey, a year in advance.
And they're going for $300-400.
I know, it's wild.
Wait, it's $300 or $400 for a ticket?
Yeah, they're scalping up.
Mm-hmm. They've already gone on sale. I know. And, I with having a big background in mythology, I really hope he does a good job of the Odyssey. I'm praying. It's a powerful, powerful story that unfortunately gets sort of juvenilized for too easily. So I'm hoping in his hands we have a very powerful story. It's interesting. So much of what's going on in the media is reinventing itself right now. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, we are all changing. AI is here. It's a contributor to all that's going on. And I hope that we find a way not to lose the theater experience, because when you think about the depth of what story is, it is the most ancient primal part of our community self. Yeah. And we sit around a campfire and we tell our stories. And if we all go into our own little environment and only embrace story in that regard, it's not, I think we're losing something very important. So I'm really hoping that we can find a way to encourage, whatever it means, to get people back into a collective experience of storytelling.
Remember, there used to be the single movie theater. Then it was like 3 screens. Then it became the multiplex. Mm-hmm. And then they were adding all kinds of bells and whistles on there. And then the format of the screen changes. I went to go see The Matrix at Cosm a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And Cosm, like I said, it's like a mini Sphere. So it's almost like a 360 experience.
Right.
And it was different than I thought. I thought they were going to actually do something completely different with the film. But what they actually did was they showed the film on a large format, but then all the graphics around it sort of worked around and based on what the movie was. And it made it super, super cool. So this movie from 25 plus years ago seemed very fresh and exciting. And people were oohing and eyeing as it went. And I just wonder that if that's the future of where everything is going.
Well, like I said, it really needs something, and it's going to need some event kind of status around it. I can't, and then there's the other side of it too. So often my husband and I have looked at each other on a Saturday night, and we said, let's have a date night and
Yeah,
go to dinner and a movie. And there's absolutely nothing that we
yeah.
we would want to sit through. Now, that's not entirely true all year round, but a lot of the year it is. And we've got to improve the status of story too, and the quality of what's being shared.
You don't need a cosm or a sphere to go see a movie like The Bridges of Madison County or, It's a Wonderful Life. I mean, those will work in any format, whether it's on your
Mm-hmm.
little TV or on a big movie screen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I wonder if there's sort of a crisis of story. I mean, and the fact that so many studios now are remaking. I mean, I Know What You Did Last Summer. They're not even calling it a sequel, a prequel. They're just literally taking the exact same movie with new stars and
Mm-hmm.
rehashing it.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this brings up a big question. I just want to sort of chop this up just a little bit
Yeah.
because the two of you are talking about delivery system. First of all, IMAX or the
Yeah.
Sphere and all of that. And that is exciting because it's an event. It's like going to Disneyland or it's like going to,
Yeah.
Universal. It's going to an event place. And I have not seen the Sphere in Las Vegas, but I can't imagine going there and not going to see the Sphere because of what it is and what it, but that's a delivery system. On the other end of the spectrum is the
Yeah.
story that's being told, and they are right now very far apart in many ways.
Yeah.
And in the middle you have the business called show business. Let's make money. In other words, I'm wondering about Christopher Nolan's, what's he doing? The Odyssey? That's what he's
Yeah.
doing?
It's the Odyssey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, the Odyssey. And immediately it's IMAX, which is much more expensive, much more, and what are the producers thinking? This will bring more. I mean, already. I mean, they're selling tickets at $300-400 already. I
A
mean,
year
how
in
can we?
advance.
We're going to make money off this movie, whether it does well or not, whether it's a good story or not. So
See,
there's
that's what I'm saying though. That is the storytelling now being configured by the delivery system. I remember
that's 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 the big question.
the first time I went to Cosm, I went to go see, I think it was a Dodger game. And as soon as they started to show the screen, I said, this is the future of entertainment. This is the only way people are going to want to see because it's so overwhelming. And you're literally almost in the scene or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
This gets back to virtual reality and all of that stuff. In other words, creating an experience, a viewing experience that is so overwhelming that you're going just for that and you're not going for the story.
Yeah.
And obviously that is such a big problem. Let's start with the Odyssey. It's a good story. So
Yeah.
can they, can they mine the story for all it's worth, and not just try to turn it into almost a comic book epic. I don't know.
Well, so Dara,
I certainly hope not.
with your expertise, I mean, put your thinking cap on then. How would you, as a story guru, as a story expert, take a story like the Odyssey, and what do you see the differences would be on how you approach the storytelling on a regular screen versus an IMAX screen, or would there be a difference?
Well, you're getting into a couple things that concern me just a little bit,
Yeah,
because while it's terrific that a movie like The Odyssey is going to be enormously well funded and can bring in all the bells and whistles to bring it into IMAX or whatever super duper format, I don't, some of the best films over the last decade have been very small films shot on, relatively speaking, smaller budgets. And I certainly don't want to see them not having also a meeting place for these great stories. So we have to be a little bit careful about that, because unfortunately, the story in so many of the films that are getting made today are running in the category of also ran. In other words, all the special effects and all of the big name stars and all of this is where all the attention is going. And if story is the story is something in a close enough format, that's good enough. Over the weekend, we did have a dinner date. I went with my husband to see. We met some friends to see F1. And
I was just going to bring that up, actually.
I don't know. Have you seen it?
I saw it. I was going to make a comment about it,
Well,
but I want to hear what you say first.
well, so it was interesting. My husband and the husband of my friend, they loved it because it's a genre film, and if you're into all that action and activity, it delivers. There's no question about it, and it's beautifully shot.
Yeah.
And all, but the story is so.
Mm.
The story is Formula One. I mean, you and I, it is about as formula as you could get, and it's not a terrible formula, but there, it was very interesting. So, in the beginning of the film, he is offered this opportunity and is trying to decide what to do, and he's talking to a waitress in a cafe, and he says, "I'm making a big decision." And wrestling what to do, it would pay a lot of money. And anyway, this question came up. Well, he says to her something about the fact it's not about the money. And then she responds, "Well, what is it about?" Okay. And there's the central question of the story. And so we go all the way to the very end, and they contrive a way to bring the question back again. Where someone said he's doing some racing on the beach in Mexico. And the guy says to him, "We don't, there's no money in this." And he says, "It's not about the money."
Yeah.
And he says, "Well, what is it about?" And he just kind of smiles at him.
Yeah.
So what has happened in between is almost literally nothing regarding who this man is and what he has experienced. They want you to believe there's an arc of character. But one of the ways I always teach my students to kind of evaluate an arc of character is to ask this simple question. What does my central character, my protagonist, achieve by the end of the story that he or she wasn't fully capable of achieving in the beginning? And if the answer is not very much, then you haven't told very much of a story.
Well, and in F1, what happened?
Yeah. And and he is a self-contained person at the beginning of the story who's made some life choices that are, probably weren't great, but he's come to live with the choices he's made, right? So how do you develop a character from that, right? And so
the delivery system, watching that in a theater where it's loud and the seats are rumbling, and it's exciting. And I thought, if you watch this on an iPad, though, would you skip through the middle 75 minutes?
I mean, I have to say they're probably going to win the Academy Award for editing because they did a great, masterful job of. I mean, there were 9 races, right?
Yeah,
and they're almost indistinguishable from each other. But they kept it going and moving and all of that. But at the end of the day, you leave the movie theater going, I don't know, where do you want to go for a drink? There is nothing in that story that leaves with you.
It did big enough numbers, though.
Maybe you're hearing. But
it did big enough numbers to the point that Apple was talking about either buying or investing in F1. Who made the movie?
Right. Now, there's something to be said for genre movies that don't really care about the character and the story and so on. Like I said, my husband had a great time.
Yeah.
The problem that we have is not that. The problem is that we're getting a steady diet of that.
Right.
And I have this deep theory that very much like the the sexual act is physiologically is made to be enjoyable so that we propagate the species. I believe that narrative hits all of those same enjoyable bells and whistles within us, so that we tell our stories and we propagate the psyche. So that story isn't just an entertainment venue; it actually carries information.
Right.
And so when it's carrying information that is telling us that the experiences and events in our lives don't really impact us, that's not just a shallow piece of storytelling. It's actually a very detrimental piece of storytelling.
Explain that more. Explain what you
Well,
mean.
if on your way to the studio here where you're shooting, you had a fender bender,
Yeah.
okay, you'd come in rattled. It wasn't life changing, but you're a little rattled
Yeah.
because things that happen to us in the external world impact our inner life. So if we're telling a story where we have a conflict in the outer physical world that's big enough to pull our protagonist into the story and it demands resolution, how is it impacting their inner world? That's not a secondary thing. That is the human story. Okay. So if we're not telling that story, that the events in our lives do impact us, then, as I said, it's like, it's like if you enjoyed a Big Mac once in a while, you had a little junk food, it's not going to harm you. But if that's all you ever eat, your system is going to fail over it. And
But is that why we watch movies and we watch TV shows? Are we looking maybe subconsciously to learn something about ourselves to help us with our own struggles and our own problems in reality?
well, I want you to think about the answer to that, because what other function does it have? Okay, that I call narrative the human instruction manual. It does
Yeah.
tell us how to live, and it doesn't have to be a great big narrative. It can be, "Hi, honey,
Right.
how was your day?" Okay, we are a narrative making, metaphor making machine. That is the only way we take in life. We don't have any other way of comprehending reality. All
Yeah.
right, it's all narrative, and it's all instructional. I mean, think about people who are raised in a home where there's physical or emotional abuse. All right, the
Yeah.
narrative. Think of the narrative that people are learning, and they can spend a lifetime, trying to get past that they can live better than that. Okay, so everything that we are surrounded by is telling us a story. And when you think about the stories that live inside you, it doesn't matter what genre they are, they touch a piece of your own humanity. And that's really, really important. And we seem to be that it's just getting completely obscured, I think.
So what does a Dara Marks take away from the Brad Pitt character in F1? Did you learn anything from that? Did it give you any insight
Well,
into your soul?
I'm gonna make a big jump here.
Yeah.
Let's compare it to the Odyssey. The Odyssey
Yeah.
is, for me, it's a story about, in the first half of life we have our outer bound journey, that we go out into the world and we stake our claim on the world, we stake our claim on our identity, we fight for what we want to become, all of that. And then there is a point in life for those of us who have any kind of a successful life where we make the turn and head homeward,
Right.
head back inward. Okay. And so this is, that's the Odyssey. He is making the journey homeward,
Yeah.
and he leaves Troy victorious. He helped defeat the Trojans, and he's coming home. And the whole journey home is a process of dismantling, of taking all that ego stuff apart and taking him down to skin and bones to say, "This is who you are." And the F1 is an Odyssean story. It's a story about finding your way home again. And we live in a culture where people talk a lot about the epidemic of loneliness and the
Yeah.
epidemic of isolation. And I just don't believe that it's directly about not being connected to enough people. I think that the epidemic of loneliness is being disconnected from ourselves.
Oh,
And,
yeah, absolutely.
and this is why this kind of storytelling is so important. So when Brad Pitt's character is just this self-contained guy who,
Loner.
yeah,
Yeah.
who, okay, he went back and reclaimed something that should have been his a long time ago that slipped through his hands. But by the end of the story, he has an opportunity to, there's a woman in the story that he could have connected with, and it's see around the neighborhood.
Yeah.
To me, that's not a heroic tale, that's a tragic tale. Okay. Yeah. And I'm not talking about a predictable soapy ending where he goes off into it's about connection. I mean, the whole Odyssey story is about getting back to Penelope, getting back to his wife, getting back to the center of his own being. And to me, metaphorically, that's a lot of the function of the Penelope character, getting back to something that makes meaning out of one's existence.
So Dara, I find this fascinating. I love listening to the two of you. But you're putting side by side Odyssey and F1, and you said F1 is a similar journey.
It's an archetypal story, yes.
Okay, archetypal story. Where does it miss the mark for you? Is it in the writing? Is it in the character? Is it where did, if, in other words, if structurally it's there, that's what you're saying. Structurally, the potential for a deeper story is there, but it's not realized.
Right.
So where do you think in the process it falls apart?
Right. And this is where so much of our storytelling is stuck today, that it's stuck in what I would consider first draft form. Okay. That, I always tell writers, you enter the story anyway the story invites you in. And so your first draft is a very intuitive draft. You're going to try this, you're going to try that. You're going to, just see what lands. And I always define, I'm going to just digress just a little bit, but I always define story as, creativity as a 3-step process, that it begins intuitively. Okay, we're bringing something in, and the third step is to release it into the world, right? And so, what happens when you're not refining the story, when you're not
what's the second
story
step?
Up, you're going from step 1 to step 3, and you're missing step 2, which is where you process the story, where you meet the story on its own ground. Because I believe that, one of the pieces we're missing here is that we not only tell story, but story tells us. And what I said in the beginning was this question that was asked, which was, if it's not about the money, what is it about? Great question. Okay. And there was no investigation of what it was really about. Okay. And it's not just a question of not making a better story for the audience. It's also a loss to the writers themselves who are missing this middle step. Because sure, yeah.
Can I just add? So when I watch F1, maybe it's for dumb guys like me that go, maybe it wasn't racing, but maybe there was something in my life like Brad Pitt that I felt that had passed me by in life. And the idea that I could get a second chance to relive that is what I'm living through in the movie. And maybe that's where, people find meaning.
Oh, I agree with you completely. Yeah. It's, again, it's all there. Yeah. It's all there. Okay. You didn't have to bring in something new to investigate it. But then I would ask you, and then so what? Because he does reclaim this thing, but he almost brushes it off as
he forsakes it. Absolutely
meaningless. And he is a man in this story who lives on an island. He has dismissed himself from the rest of life, and this is an opportunity to re-enter into the world. And he does. He enters into community, he enters into relationship, and he enters into a process that brings him deeper into himself. Okay?
Yeah.
So all the pieces are there, but they're not matured. Okay. And I don't disagree with you. I think that if anyone is touched on any level, it's for exactly what you just said, a second chance to rediscover oneself and to reconnect with oneself. But he doesn't make that, he doesn't do that in the end.
Yeah.
He's back where he started from.
Yeah, you're right. He takes a step backwards then.
He takes a step to nowhere. I mean,
Yeah.
I understand that it's kind of clever or cute that he's could have gone to this high end whatever in the sky, and instead he chose to race on the beaches. That's okay. That's kind of charming, but it didn't mean anything. That's where it dropped me off. He leaves the woman behind, says, see you around the block,
Yeah.
and all these friends and people who have believed in him and fought with him and for him. And I'll tell you one other place where it also, I felt it failed. When you come into a climax of a story, you are asking the protagonist to go and whatever the challenge was, to go in and fight for it. Okay.
Yeah.
And so he is fired and comes back anyway, which but instead it would have been so much more powerful had he walked away and then found his way back. So it didn't even make any sense to me of why, oh no, I'm not going to let you fire me.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel sometimes that writers make choices. I'm not claiming I know why this choice was made, but I feel like sometimes writers make choices because they don't want to take an obvious route. But sometimes a story needs the obvious route because that is the story that's being told.
Yeah.
Okay, so this brings up a question that's been rumbling in my head for a while. I'm going back to a lot of the stuff, and Dara froze for a moment, but we'll edit that out. So here's the question I've been thinking, listening to you. This is going to be a two-part question. One is audience members who go to the movie, individual audience members, what do they want and what do they not want? Some people do not want to be challenged exactly the way you're talking about, Dara. They don't want that. They just want to be stimulated. They want to go on a fanciful spectacle ride. Okay. Yeah. And some people want to go, like I think the three of us, we want to go and be moved in some way and even surprised in some way and challenged to think and discuss afterwards. Like you said, with this movie, you're leaving and there's nothing to talk about except where do you want to eat or something like that. So that's one part of the question. But getting down to the core of this a little bit, talking about writers who you work with and directors who I work with. And this is what I run into with directors who don't want to be challenged to go deeper, do not want to be challenged. And I've run into writers who do not, I'm not making that kind of movie. Well, and to try to open their eyes. So, because this is what you do, Dara, how do you deal with someone who is, I'm going to put it respectfully to this quote person who is frightened of looking deeper into what's really going on, frightened of looking into that moment where all is lost, when everything's going to fall apart, the difference between walking away or being fired, all of these things. And you realize the biggest obstacle they have is their own fear of what I call, well, very simply, getting out of the comfort zone. Because what you're talking about is get out of the comfort zone. The comfort zone is the formula. Get out of that. Can I just say,
it's kind of like, Dara mentioned something about food. It's like, you can have cotton candy or you can have quinoa and kale. Sometimes you're just in the mood for cotton candy.
I agree.
And that's what satisfies you at the time. I think it was Dove Simmons that said something like every movie should have 5 oh-ohs, 5 oh shits, and 1 oh my God. And that was sort of Dove's, strategy for good
Right.
filmmaking.
Yeah.
But I think it's like anything. I think that sometimes you just want to go in and you don't want to think and you just want to laugh.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I do several parts of that question. So I have several parts to the answer. Okay. Um, Part one to the answer is, had this story just been strengthened with a stronger character arc, the people who just went for the explosions and the fast cars could have had just as good a time and seen a better film. Okay.
Yeah.
So making it a little deeper and a little stronger, it would have made it simply a better movie. Period. Drop the mic. Okay. And you would have gotten the same thrills and chills out of it. And one of the primary reasons that they don't go deeper and stronger and better is because they really don't know how. Okay. That, you know, where is deeper? I don't know where deeper is. How do you get to deeper? All right. And they don't have a methodology for processing their way into the story, for investigating the story, and for understanding the story. You asked the question about, what do you do when when a director or producer or somebody, a writer, doesn't want to do the work? What can you do? I don't have a dog in that fight.
Mhm.
Because here's when I take on a client, whether it's an A-list Hollywood writer or a beginning novice, I engage every single script and every writer as if they could win the next Academy Award. When you put your script in my hands, I don't know, could be, right? And I'll do the analysis and work with the writer. And the writer will continue to let me know, one way or another, what they're willing to do. Okay. Are they willing to do the work or not? And so every step of the way, the story is only going to progress as much as they are willing to invest in the work. I can't do the work for them. And as I said, I have no dog in the fight. I can show you the path. We can talk about it. I mean, I've worked with some top writers who we have the best sessions and really go into opening up the arc and opening up this and what's the story really about, and answering that question. For example, if it's not about money, what is it about? And the session will be over and they'll go back and they'll send me a rewrite of the script and zip. Okay, it's not there.
Mhm.
So that's up to the writer. I can't sit in judgment. That's I can only sit in judgment if I go to a movie and I don't feel very satisfied. But that's only one person's opinion, and that's all my opinion is really worth at that point. So I think that one of the reasons, I'll be honest with you, that we created this online course is that there is a way to process your way into a deeper, better story. And it's really kind of sad to me that in our industry, the study of story itself and understanding how to study and process a story it not only isn't given a lot of encouragement, it's almost looked down upon, that if you're a good writer, you should just write. And
Why is that?
you don't see that in other art forms. You couldn't call yourself a ballerina if you didn't,
Why do you think that is? Why do you think writers, if you're a musician, you have to learn how to read music, write music, you learn about, different
That's exactly
instrumentation and
right.
whatnot. So why is it so taboo for writers to learn a method and to have a
Well,
process?
and look at actors.
Yeah. Oh
Actors
yeah.
actually understand they need a method.
Yeah.
It's the whole. I shouldn't speak for you, Mark, but my understanding is if everything's working, get out of the way, and if it's not, how can you process your way into it? And that's worth something.
Yeah.
It really is, because as I said, the first person any work of art speaks to is the artist. And if you're having, if you're creating something and you're only letting it ride on the surface, that information that's in that story that wants to speak to you is not getting through, and you're the poorer for it, you know.
Well, here's a question for both of you. When you both have done consultations, have you been with a writer where you thought that the story was unbelievable, that it was fantastic, but the writer just wasn't willing to put the work in to the point that it just like wounded you, that you knew it was a great story that was never going to be told because of whatever laziness or whatever it might be?
Well, yeah, I mean, recently I was working with a writer director, great script.
Yeah.
Until the third act.
Yeah.
The third act just collapsed, just fell apart. The third act, and you could tell by reading it that the ending was something that the writer knew what he wanted right away, but he had no idea how to tell the whole story and actually get to that ending. So it was it was sort of slapped on. And it was really tough to tell them how terrific the script is up until page 83 or something.
Yeah.
Then suddenly at this one moment, I said, now you lose. But basically I told them. And now this is just something interesting. And then working on it and working with him, he was terrific. Now this is the director who was sort of like a co-writer on it. He wasn't the main writer, and he rewrote it while we were working. He was open to do it, and he rewrote it while we were workshopping it, while we were working with actors, and while we were exploring scenes. And he could see the process. Now, my process was to take him through the story, which we did through with actors and workshopping, scene by scene, to examine each scene, building up where it's going, so he could say, oh yeah, well, this is going to change that. I said, yeah, you're damn right it is. So we did a rewrite without him actually sitting down and just rewriting. He was actually writing sometimes while we were workshopping. He said, hold on, and he'd go to his script, and he came up with a much better script. So that's, it's, I think, and I know that thing that Dara's talking about, you think the rewrite that's going to come is going to be, everything we talked about is going to be so terrific, and then it's not there. That's not blaming the writer. It's a huge hurdle to go from a great idea. I got this idea. Now, how do I manifest it in here, scene by scene, moment by moment, to get to where I want to get?
Is it safe to say that a script should be looked at as a living thing, that it's
Yes.
living, it's breathing, and there's always room for change, there's always room for improvement?
Yeah. To me, I tell you, the script is done when the movie is abandoned. Abandoned. And that doesn't even mean finished. It means, okay, we're done. So in other words, the rewriting goes on all the time. It is a living thing. It is a breathing thing. And it needs to be like a child. It needs to be treated that way. And as a living thing, it always holds potential. It always holds greater potential. And, and it can, and my feeling is any script, I don't care how brilliant the script is, it can always be better. Yes, it can always be improved.
Going back to methodology and process, then, Dara, you created this course. I've seen quite a bit of it, and it's really phenomenal. And I'm just wondering, how do you put that on video, that you're teaching sort of the process and the methodology, and how do writers use that if they're not working with you one-on-one? How do they use your video course to sort of go through their script?
Well, to be honest with you, one of the reasons that I was very enthusiastic. Now, by the way, I have to add something very important to the whole discussion of the course, is that I have a teaching partner, Deb Norton, and I teach, and Deb does experiential work. So each part of building the story, it's not just me lecturing and telling you about story. It's also then employing it so you can develop your skills, and that each section where we have exercises and methods and things that we develop are on two levels. One is nuts and bolts. Okay, if you're working on developing a plot, here we move through the strength of what the conflict is about, and so on and so forth. But the other part of understanding this is that at the end of the day, there's only one story to tell. It's the human story, and the only story you actually know is your own story. You don't know anybody else's story. You can write about it, but
Yeah.
it all comes, it's all, it is all channeled through you. So the idea of being able to have a course like this where it is taking you through how to, again, work with nuts and bolts. It can't all be airy fairy, let's get deep,
Yeah.
let's write all this esoteric stuff. It has to be a really strong, effective plot in any genre. And at the same time, how do you develop the character to move with the story? Because again, that's the human story. Conflict in the outer world impacts our inner life, period, right? And so one of the primary reasons we developed this is so that you can have it. So if you attended our, we do seminar, my partner and I do seminars and retreats, and it's great. We have a wonderful time and usually have fabulous students, and everybody seems to get a lot out of it, and we've had great results. But this you get to keep. This is, this is sort of the same thing, so that you can actually work the program. And again, it's about building the whole story, understanding plot more deeply and character more deeply, and building an arc. And then how do you lay out the whole story and all of that, right? And it's because it's yours. Let's say you're writing a new script and you feel pretty strong about plot, but boy, that stuff on the character arc or getting to theme still eludes me. It's yours. You can go back and redo it and reprocess it every time. So it kind of takes you and it's helping, again, my belief is that every writer who writes is probably a writer because they've had moments of glory. Somewhere along the line, they wrote something that their friends liked, their teachers loved, or whatever. Something turned out great. And so now, as they continue to write, they're trying to get that back again. And what I believe the function of learning technique is about, it's about being able to recapture consciously what you've done unconsciously. Yeah. And then it becomes a tool. Because I see this, I'm sure Mark sees this all the time in his classes too, where I'll be talking along and whatever, and suddenly I can see somebody in the audience and I've lost them because they're just scrambling and they're writing and they're very excited about something. And it's because that pathway just opened, oh, that's how I get there, and I love to see that when it's happening in the class, because that's what you're trying to get back to. And that's what technique really is. It's being able to do something consciously that you've done unconsciously. And so the goal is not to make a Dara Marks writer. The goal is to make you find your own technique within it is basically it.
And Dara, I've talked to Mark about this a lot. That you're on a business level, you're kind of the quiet assassin living there in your sleepy little town because McKee hasn't put this on video, Truby hasn't put it on video, Vogler hasn't put it on video. Nobody has done the time and effort and the work that you've done to actually put. It's like almost like a legacy project that this will live on, and it's always going to be living, and it's always going to be breathing, and it's always going to be there for writers to go back to. And it's sort of amazing to me that no one else has done this to this level before, because your thing is really, it's top notch. It's beautifully shot. It's beautifully edited. It's just a great piece of learning content for people to get a hold of.
Instead of fighting for the life that cancer tried to take from him, he became the cancer and destroyed everything in his path. It's the potentially fatal component that invites the writer to go exploring and follow the trajectory of the human struggle to evolve and make new life, or not. This is the foundation of the arc of character. If the protagonist in a story has no serious need for transformation, there's really no serious need for the telling of the story.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that.
One thing too, having taken not the whole course, Dara, but a lot of the course, my appreciation is, and a lot of this has to do because of my background in theater and my background even as an actor. Your course is not just intellectual. Because I can get trapped. I got to do this. I got to do this. Okay, I got a turning point here. This is what an inciting incident. All of this stuff. because of you, as I've told you, Dara, what I admire is you have a two-prong course, which is you and Deb. And Deb takes you through an experience. And I know that, and this is very important, not only working with the directors and actors that I work with, artists respond differently to information. And some kinesthetically, some intellectually, say, depends. Because of this two-prong thing, you don't know when that aha is going to click in this course. You could listen to a whole lecture from you, and then you're doing something with Deb, and also you go, oh, wait a minute. She asked me to do something, and I did it, and I had this experience, because Deb's is experiential more than just informational. And the mixture, the blend of those two forces working together, I think, is the magic of the whole course. And
thank you.
The fact that you have, as you say, and then you have it there. You can say, oh, okay, I'm going to go back. I had an epiphany at this, lesson 3. Well, I'm going to do lesson 3 again. Let's see if I can have another epiphany. I can go back and do that again, because, and that's what I find totally unique, like you're saying, Derek, about this course, is this two-prong, multiple, something's going to happen. And you're right. And it has to, and it's getting to what you are talking about. A lot of what I talk about when I'm working with directors and actors especially is, I have to get them to the point where they actually stop thinking. Yeah. They actually stop trying to control the process, where they can, this is where the interrogation process comes in, and even working with directors to get them to stop thinking and act intuitively, instinctively, which is where, and from the unconscious. And that's what you're doing. So it's not just you, Dara, there, lecture, and go, okay, another lecture. No, it's knowing I'm going to go back and forth. It's a greater party than that. It's you don't know what's going to happen.
Mark, it's not even so much. It's not even a lecture. She's just like talking to you. I mean, that's what's so weird about watching it. It's that it would be like Dara sitting in your living room telling you this stuff. I mean, it's just so approachable and it's so friendly. And I'm curious, I could see if you're a writer and you're working on a new project, you'd go back and you'd watch the course again, because maybe it sparks something that you forgot or you along the way. And I think this is sort of what, Dara, you were talking about with process and methodology, that eventually, if you just keep doing it over and over and you sort of keep learning every step of the way, it becomes very intuitive then. The methodology becomes intuitive.
Yeah, it helps you discover an opening. Because, one of the things we don't really credit and understand well enough is that if you look at the nature of creativity, okay, the nature of creativity is to create. And what is create? To create is to make new life. So if you are looking at a project and if you are involved in writing something, you are up against the boundary of your own known world, right? You're making new life. So what happens when you hit that boundary? Do you stay on this side and write everything that's safe and predictable? Or do you find a method, a way of penetrating that veil and getting to the new thing that is trying to speak to you and through you? And it sounds daunting, but it's not if you have a method. And if it's possible, that's another thing, that if you're not being taught this, you can get applauded for staying in the safe zone, just spinning your wheels in what you already know and not getting it to the next new thing.
Well, true. Yeah. I mean, you can get applauded for writing 100 pages on final draft that looks like a script. Mm-hmm. That's it. Wow, you wrote a script. How bravo.
Yeah.
What do you see as the biggest problem in people that have come to you? The biggest problem that writers have, I both as a first-time writer and as somebody who is really experienced, has had success. What do you see their biggest problems are?
I'll be honest with you. To me, one of the reasons I love my work and I love doing story analysis is that every script is like a fingerprint. It is all so unique. So I'm constantly challenged, when I'm reading a script and I'm working with the writer. There's no simplistic way to look at it, that there is something unique going on here. But also the challenge is that writers write to their strength. Okay. So if your strength is writing a really strong plot, the weakness is probably going to be in developing the character arc to go with the plot. So that's probably what we have to strengthen. But I have writers, I work with a good number of writers who write brilliant character arcs and brilliant thematic stuff. And the plot just is a lump. It's just laying there, so that their strength needs to be the thing that they need to really work on is getting their whole ability to write conflict and to push elements of the story forward. So I'm very blessed because my reputation for working with writers getting into the depth of their story means that a lot of my clients come to me for exactly that reason. So I don't come up against a lot of resistance. But writers just will, as human beings, are going to have a big variability on what their own willingness is to go further. And as I said, I don't have a dog in the fight. I will be here. I'll support you. I'll take you as far as you want to go. I've had writers that have come to me and kind of things petered out because it never really went anywhere. And they come back to me 5 years later and said, I'm ready to do it now. Okay, that's when the script wanted to be born. We can do that,
Do both of you see a difference in the seriousness of writers today versus 10 years ago or 20 years ago? Or is it pretty much that they're just as serious and it's about the craft and the art as it was back then?
That's an interesting question.
What do you mean by seriousness?
That they really care about the story they're telling. That it's not just, I'm going to sell this idea for $1 million. That they really want to craft a great, well-told story.
Well, first, I'll answer. I'll try to answer first.
Please do.
Dara will have much more to say about this. Since I'm working primarily with director writers. Yeah. And I work with some writers. That is because I'm working with the director on the project. Usually, it's not just the writer. So the seriousness of the writers is not but in the seriousness of the director, and a lot of the directors who then take over the writing, which is another can be a problem, but maybe not. I rarely find that their seriousness is centered in the story. It's centered in the project. Mm-hmm. I want to get this done. I mean, this I heard recently. I've got to get this done. I have to revive my career. This film is going to have to do it. I said, well, there's a great reason to be making a movie. I mean, you'd be better off going out and becoming, build houses. Don't try to make it anyway. So, but it's a good question. Is really what is driving that individual writer or director? And I get really excited when I read a script that is really exciting, and I realize that the writer is really intent upon this story, and telling this story to the best of their ability. That's exciting. Because we can forget, I want to forget about all the other, I want to forget about the financing, the distribution, Netflix or whatever it is. I want, can we just stick with the story? And that's exciting when that happens. But very often there's something else driving, even if it's not mentioned, there's something else driving it.
And what about you, Dara?
Well, I'm going to take a little tangent. It was a good question. I want to take a little tangent on what Mark was just saying. Very often on projects that I'm called in to work on that are, that are movies that are headed into production, or some of them are already in production, I work with writer, director, and producer sometimes. And a lot of my work will focus in the initial stages in doing what I call theme work, of getting to what the story is really about. And I have a process that I put the script through with the writer and director, whoever's working, to sort of answer that question. And because then, when someone turns someone a script, they want notes on the page, and they want to fix those notes, and then they want the script to be done. And so you're moving furniture around. It doesn't really amount to much. So I always put theme work first, because theme will answer so many of the questions that strengthen the plot and strengthen the character development. Okay. And my little tangent I wanted to add to this is that when I put writers and directors and sometimes producers, which I really liked, I liked the trio, because filmmaking is a collaborative art. Now they're all telling the same story, because so many problems arise in production because the writer, producer, and directors are unconsciously telling different stories. They haven't found their way into the center of what the story is really about. And there'll always be creative differences, but at least if you are in agreement what the story is about, you're now making a creative argument that is going to resolve itself in really strengthening the story. And this also goes for when I work with writing partners. I cannot tell as almost to 100% when I'm working with a writing partnership, that when I get a hold of an original, a first draft or an early draft, and I put them through the thematic process, they are on a different page. And it's never a question of who's right and who's wrong, because theme is very expansive. So that as long as they're in the same ballpark, we can extend the tent so that it can really kind of include thematically how they both see the world. But now they have a much deeper language to communicate with each other in the creative choices. Because, if you look at Mark's work, it's 360 degrees of a scene. It's not just the dialogue. It's everything that's going on in the room, and how people are dressed, and mannerisms, and all kinds of things. And when it's played thematically, it becomes supercharged. And everything starts to make sense in a deep, rich way that some of it's you can calculate, but theme has a way of catching hold, and you'll be sitting in dailies going, how did I get that shadow there? That's the story right there. And it just happens because you're in the zone. You are participating fully in the story. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I like this whole theme. To me, Dara, the term theme, I remember college and high school and college and all that. What's the theme? And it's one of those annoying things. Like, I don't know. You look it up. That doesn't help. You talk to the teacher. That doesn't help.
No.
And even now, so that's my knee-jerk reaction when you say theme. I go, oh, it's not that I'm resisting it now, but I'm remembering the resistance then. Or you're going to have to write an essay, and here's the theme, and
I don't blame you, Mark.
I resisted. I said, "Well, just let me write, for God's sake. Just let me write. Don't tell me, don't try to control it." But your way of working, as I understand it, is okay. Here you have draft 1, 2, 3, whatever it is. Let's look at what's there. Let's listen to what the story. Let's listen and this is very much the way I work.
That's exactly right.
Let the story, and I do it even to the characters. Let the characters tell you what the theme is about. And when many times when I'm working with directors, writers, and especially with actors too, I think it's about this. I think this scene is about this. And I say, it doesn't matter what you think right now. What matters is what the characters would think. Let's talk. In other words, let's talk. Let's have the story, the characters, or the events talk back to us. And sometimes in that, there's one project I'm working on now, which is a terrific project, finding what a scene is about, because there's a flaw in the scene, and we find there's a mistake in the scene that nobody can figure out what to do it. Well, that is starting to reveal what the scene is really about. In other words, but you're looking at it, you're not just trying to put a Band-Aid on it. You're trying to expose or find or discover what this could really be. what it could be, what this moment could be now.
Well, I have to say, Mark, this is why I'm so excited about your work because, and I've been a big fan of Mark's ever since he and I met years and years ago, and I encountered his work because, your whole how do I have the investigation?
Interrogation.
Your method? Interrogation. Thank you. I'm sorry. Is you're doing it in a different way, but it's forming a relationship with the story.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we're not taught how to do. So I don't blame you for how you feel about theme. It's a horrible question. Well, what's the theme? So, well, what I was saying is that if you don't have any kind of a method for entering into some kind of a relationship with the story, that it's it's a fill in the blanks process as opposed to something that is living and breathing. I mean, we've all gone to movies that weren't perfect, but there's an energy in them.
Yeah.
Because to me, theme, people often mistake theme for some highfalutin philosophical, position on life that could rival Plato, or and to me, that's not a theme. To me, a theme is discovery. Theme is what is beckoning you, what is calling you. And so you're not looking for an answer to what a theme is. You're looking for the call. You're looking for, I don't fully understand it, but what's coming through here is that there's something in this story about self-empowerment. And I got to find where that lives in me and what I know to be true and where it scares me. And that's what creates that wonderful edge when you go to see a film that we can say is edgy. It's because, again, it's penetrating the veil. Yep. It's trying to get to the other side of, creating new life. And it's moving past that boundary to say, I'm a little scared to go there. Not sure what's there. But and that's your humanity. And when a story touches there, you're not alone in that humanity. I mean, one of the things we say about an archetype is that we're all the same except in the detail. And so when you can tell me the truth through your story, you're also telling me my truth. I always say nobody invents what it means to be human. And so that's what happens when a story is alive and the theme is working. It's not answering the question. It's moving into the question, if you will.
Yeah.
Let me ask you.
One thing.
Go ahead, Mark.
What you just said, not answering the question, because that little thing you said. My experience, so many times talking with writers, and I will bring up a question about a scene or the whole script, whatever it is, and I can see that they feel the necessity to, quote, answer the question. That they should have the answer because they wrote the stupid thing and they should have the answer. Or if I say it's not clear to me what you're saying, well, then it's my fault or whatever. But to get beyond that, what I hear you're saying is like you're saying going for theme or whatever the movie is about. Or one of my favorite things is what do you want? How do you want the audience to leave the movie? What do you want them to feel and to be talking about and thinking about? The theme will come through there because that's the desire, the impact. But
that's right.
The goal is to stop. This is one of my big favorite subjects, control. Stop trying to control everything. Everything. Don't to writers, directors, actors, stop trying to control it. Relax and learn from it. Learn from it. Discover. Be willing to discover. You don't have to have the answer now. You may not have the answer for another month. That's fine.
That goes back to if you've got a great theme and the story is well written and it's a very personal story to you, how do you relay that to somebody else that they get equally as excited about your story? If I'm not just talking about an executive or a production company, but if you're telling a friend, you've got a script, you love this script, it's well written, what would you guys recommend is the best way to relay that excitement, that story to somebody?
I'll tell you my way. Tell a story. Don't tell that story. Tell a story.
Don't pitch it.
No, I mean, one thing, this is what a solo show I worked on, which we tried to figure out how to start it. He started with, have you ever, to the audience, have you ever wondered what your life would be like if you never left the town you were born in? Now that's the beginning of a story. And I go, well,
Yeah.
now, in other words, stimulate the audience's
I love that.
imagination and their
Yeah.
curiosity. Now, that could be the theme that you're dealing with in this movie. But rather than telling the whole movie, hit them with the thing that they'll probably be hit with when they go see it. They go, "Whoa, that's interesting." Yeah, well, okay, that's what my movie's about. Wow,
Now, is that the
really?
theme? Dara, is that like a theme?
It can be, I mean, going along with following on what Mark was saying. When I, occasionally when I do speaking engagements, people will want to have pitch sessions and so on and so forth. And my advice in pitching is pitch your passion,
Yeah.
whatever that is. In other words, what pulled you to the story. And there's Mark's idea of tell a story. You don't even have to tell the story.
Right.
You can say, I spent the first 40 years of my life stuck in my hometown and was afraid to lift my head above ground to see what the rest was there. Now, your film could be something related, but different, because notice what happens.
You suck them into your head.
Well, again, this goes back to the idea that nobody invents what it means to be human. We're all the same except in the detail, right? And so that if there is a fear of facing the new thing, of standing on your own 2 feet or whatever, we all have that living within us. And that vulnerability it's not just appealing. It goes right from one soul into another. I mean, I'm not trying, it really does. You're suddenly in a human realm. And when you're just pitching, so here's a great idea, and he robbed the bank and he did. Now, it could be exciting. And in all fairness, some great pitches can come out when someone has a tremendously unique idea, right? So, and that could be your passion, right? That I couldn't stop. I couldn't sleep when I had this idea that I suddenly saw this or whatever. And that's why we say pitch your passion. Yeah. And that begins with a story. That begins with why this is important. And it's very hard to discredit that.
Yeah.
It like I said, you're already engaged at a human level. And let the story sort of unspool from there. But some of this I learned the hard way. When I was in my 20s, I had a writing partner, and we wrote a spec script, and it got us a lot of meetings. And we took this great idea into a studio exec somewhere, I don't remember. And the studio exec said, "Well, I kind of like that, and I'd like to send it up the chain or whatever. Just write me 5 pages or whatever, treatment of something like that." So we went home and in excruciating detail, we wrote this story, and it died. That was the end of this. That was the end of it, at least with that person at the time. And I really learned the hard way. That's not it. That's not what is going to sell. What is going to sell is to keep trying, engaging people and bring them in at levels of communication and understanding and excitement. And when I say pitch your passion, notice what it does. It makes the writer think about, well, why do I care about this project?
Yeah.
One of the best pieces of advice I ever got when I was pitching a TV show, the very first time, somebody said, "Don't worry about what you're pitching, sell yourself," because the whole thing they're buying is they want to be in business with you. So if they like you, then you have a much better chance of selling whatever you're trying to sell them. And I thought that was like such a great piece of advice.
Yeah.
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 Because it's all about personal relationships and, keeping people, I never try to, when I've talked to executives over the years, I still keep in touch with all of them. Even if I have nothing to pitch, I always drop them a note, say, "Hello, how are you doing? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah." Just to always keep that communication open.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So. All right. Well, this has been amazing. We'll put the link below for Dara's course. If you click that link, you'll save, what was it, like 40%? Something ridiculous.
I would be delighted to give your listeners a wonderful a discount. And, my passion is to teach. So that I want that more than anything. And to form a relationship with more and more writers where we can go down this trail together.
So definitely check it out. Check out the link. Buy this course. You will not be disappointed.
Thank you.
Dara is, among the best of the best. And the fact that she's taken the time, effort, and energy to actually put this in a format that's so accessible and so fun to watch, you can't beat it. There's nothing else like it out there.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's my hard pitch for it. But you know what? I really mean it. I mean, I've done this for a long time too. You guys know that I've been doing this for a long time. And the one thing I don't do is bullshit people about stuff that's out there. So if I'm telling you it's good, it's really, really good. So definitely check it out.
You're wonderful. Thank you. And you guys are wonderful. And I love your work. So thank you. And I just have to say one quick thing. I really love your podcast, and I love the idea of the pulse of story, because the pulse is the heartbeat. And we spend so much time in our heads when we're thinking and developing story. So to look at it through the pulse, look at it through the heart is what is really, really valuable. So I wish you guys tremendous success in this podcast, because I think you're talking about things that are we're all dying to really be talking about. So.
Well, Dara, thank you so much.
Thank
Mark,
you.
You have anything to add?
No, I'm just dittoing everything you said about Dara and her work, and I'm just encouraging people. One thing, if you go to, I think we're going to put up her website. Yeah. Go to the website.
Yeah,
I'm really right, because the way the website is set up is brilliant. That you can hear a little bit of each lesson. You haven't even bought into it yet. In other words, there's enough of a preview there that you can really get a strong say. Just go to the website, look it up, and start looking at the course. It's amazing. Bravo. And I wish you the best with it.
Thank you, guys. This is wonderful.
Well, I'm Dara Christopher from Mark Travis. Thank you for joining the Pulse of Story. And Dara Marks, always a pleasure. Please come back anytime.
I'd love to. Perfect.
And we'll see you guys. And we'll see you guys next time.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.